done the last time. Right. On the agenda. Oh, now I've got to go through all these things, haven't I? We've got the fire evacuation. I think everybody except perhaps 2 people might not know what we're supposed to do in case of fire. But if there is a fire, I don't think we're expecting any kind of noises, but in case there is, out through the exits there and down to the park outside, pretty please, as quickly as you can, and please don't use the lifts. The meeting is actually being webcast. Yep. Yes. And please could people turn off or go silent their mobiles. I think that's most of my housekeeping, I think. Right, number 1, apologies for absence. We have Stephen Marks. Oh, we're losing people, are we? Oh, right. Has to go outside to do it, does he? Stephen Marks is unable to be with us, and there is no substitute. John Leake is unable to be with us, and Councillor Elaine Still has kindly come in his place. Thank you for that. I think that is all. Councillor, yes. Technically, Councillor Osselton is the member for this committee, so she is resigned and being replaced by Councillor Sanders, our leader. But he has to wait till the next full council before he can officially be on it. Right, item number 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any? For the minutes, pension, yeah, okay. No, fine. What we haven't got, of course, is a vice chairman, because John Leake is normally our vice chairman, but he's not here. So could we have a nomination, please, for vice chairman for just today? Dan, would you like to be vice chairman? Fine. Thank you very much, Dan. Right, item number 3, urgent matters. I've not been notified of any. Have we got any? No? Thank you. Minutes of the committee held on the 8th of September, which is paper A. Is everybody happy with them?
Yes. Chairman, I didn't see my, I did declare an interest, as Councillor Jones did, with the pension scheme that we're paying to.
Right.
I think that's Councillor Jones. Yeah, so my name needs to go on there, please. Was it asked if we had a declaration of interest? Yeah. Something to do with the pensions.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll come back to you in just a minute. Are we happy? It'll just be added in, will it? Right, are you happy with that? Okay, fine. If everybody's happy, I will sign these afterwards. Will that be all right? Thank you very much. Right, on to the one and only paper, apart from the minutes, which is paper B, which is the interim arrangements for Chief Executive. Are you going to present it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report concerns arrangements for appointing an interim head of paid service to fill the gap from when our current Chief Executive retires on the 30th of November until a new Chief Executive is appointed. There's a statutory requirement under the Local Government and Housing Act for each authority to appoint a head of paid service, and therefore it is essential that the Council makes temporary arrangements to cover this period. In this report, it's proposed that the Director of Governance and Commissioning and the Director of Borough Services are jointly appointed as interim head of paid service. The Chief Executive has in fact already started delegating responsibility for various functions to both our directors in order to ensure a seamless transition, and will act in an advisory capacity on these functions until his retirement. But to be clear, he continues to be the head of paid service until the 30th of November. However, in recognition of the fact that both directors will be taking on some of these functions before the end of November, it is proposed that they start to receive financial compensation from 1st of November, and that their deputy chief executive allowance, which they currently receive, ceases from this time. That's actually a change from the information that's contained in paragraph 4.4 of this report. So we're proposing just to start the payment slightly earlier, but to be clear, Tony continues to be our head of paid service until he retires at the end of November. The directors will be awarded a temporary honorarium payment from 1st of November based on the chief executive pay grade for the duration of their interim appointment, and that's in accordance with the council's pay policy statement. This also has a knock-on impact on the position of monitoring officer, which is currently undertaken by the Director of Governance and Commissioning, and that will also need to be designated to a different officer, as the monitoring officer and head of paid service roles cannot be carried out by the same officer. So it was already envisaged that the head of governance and commissioning would take over the monitoring officer role from early 2015 onwards, and it's therefore recommended that this is brought forward to start from 1st of December 2014. So this committee is therefore asked to recommend to full council approval of the recommendations in 2.1 of this report.
Can I just double check? There's nothing to, you've changed 4.4, but there's nothing in our recommendations that's being changed, is there?
No, there is nothing in the recommendations that's being changed, no.
Chairman, can I just ask, as far as I can recall, our chief executive had a split role between ourselves and Heart Council. No? No. Was it? We had services, you know, not the chief executive. Okay, that's fine, then, no question.
Councillor Jones.
Can you, I don't really understand the 4.4, the point you're making. You're saying the directors are already paid as temporary or deputy chief executives if the chief executive was out sick. Now we're doing away with that payment and paying them something different. I don't understand that, because surely that is part of their role. Why are we paying more, or is it the same?
The proposal is that they would be paid more in line with the chief executive's pay grade. They currently receive an allowance for deputy chief executive that's paid to both of them. So I do appreciate the point. I think the point that's being made is that actually Tony is delegating some of the functions that he does currently to both of the directors. So they are actually doing some of that head of paid service role, and they will be doing that from the 1st of November. And that's being done to make sure that there's a seamless transition, and so that in some cases as well, some of our external contacts, people outside of the council, know and start liaising with the director who will be responsible for undertaking those functions before Tony leaves. So that's part of the reason why that's being done.
I'll be perfectly honest, I still don't get it. Because if you're a deputy chief executive, you would take those roles if someone's on long-term sick. I assume we're only talking a month, are we? Or did I read that wrong? To the 1st of December? So what? To me, it's not right. You know, you're not talking 6 months. You're talking up until the 1st of December. I just can't see it myself.
Yeah, I can see what Councillor Jones is saying. The issue is longer than a month. Actually, it's from the 1st of November until such time as a new chief executive would be appointed, and probably that would be the 1st of February, possibly the 1st of March. So it will be November, December, January, February. But I also don't understand why you would make it applicable from the 1st of November. The fact that he's delegating to them already is neither here nor there. They're both deputies. So I wouldn't agree with that. And I'm not sure that there's any need, unless there's something in, unless your argument is that you have to have a head of paid service and it can't be a deputy chief executive. Are we saying, therefore, that the deputy roles don't require them to undertake the role when they're needed to? For example, in times of holiday. And what happened when he was sick? He was off for a while. He wasn't well. They remained as deputies. They didn't get well. In which case, no, they remain as deputies and they pick up the work.
To come back on that.
I do appreciate the point that's being made, and I'll certainly discuss that with the chief executive outside of the meeting and put that point to him. And you've made that point very well. Thank you.
We make the decision, not the chief executive. I'm afraid I must insist that we make the decision. It isn't a matter for you, and no disrespect to either of you, but it's our decision. Otherwise, if it wasn't our decision, it wouldn't be in the paper to us. So we need to make that decision.
Lee, did I think? Oh, sorry, I thought your hand went up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Just to be clear, the appointment of the head of paid service role is for members to determine, absolutely. And if your decision is that that shouldn't start for Laura and Karen until the 1st of December, then completely understand that. How they are actually paid once they are head of paid service, that is a matter for the current head of paid service to determine. So the actual payment arrangements for them during that interim period is a head of paid service decision. But the appointment and the start date of the head of paid service, it absolutely is a member decision. So I appreciate that's the part of it that I will discuss with Tony. If hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I was hoping you could explain the last line. This is in line with the council's pay policy statement. Which bit of the statement is it in line with? Because clearly this wonderfully statement has foreseen this possibility and deals with it, and it would be useful to have the actual wording to make sure that we're doing whatever it is in line with with policy.
Yes, certainly. It's in the pay policy statement. It's section 4.5, and I have a copy in front of me here. It might just help if I read this out to you. Heads of service, in this case, obviously it wouldn't be at head of service level, but heads of service have the discretion to award an honorarium payment to recognise temporary increased responsibility or work of a particularly high standard. Generally, it should be the case that this must have been carried out for at least 1 month before an honorarium payment will be considered. The amount awarded should reflect the nature and duration of the work of responsibility and not normally exceed the value of an increment in the employee's salary scale. The head of resources and the head of human resources must be consulted before any action is taken. Where the employee has been covering in the absence of a more senior officer, honorarium payments are calculated based on the difference between the employee scale point and the bottom scale of the role they are covering. And it goes on to say they shouldn't normally last for more than 12 months, which it wouldn't be the case here.
That's perfect, except it doesn't cover the issue that I've raised, that they are both deputies, and that's the difference.
I must admit I'm struggling with this a bit because I know this is local government and it's not the business world, but in the business world, if you're a deputy and there is no longer somebody who above you, then you step up into that role until such time as somebody is appointed, and you very rarely get paid for doing that work. It's regarded as being part and parcel of what you were being paid for in the first place, to act as the fallback position. If what we're saying is that for the time when they will be without a chief exec, which I suspect is going to be at least 3 to 4 months, that some payment should be given to recompense them for the additional responsibility, bearing in mind that it's not going to be very much and the taxman will take most of it away, it hardly seems worth the effort. but it is reasonable that there should be a temporary honorarium possibly for that. But it would have to be very small, and it should not be based upon the difference between what they were receiving, including their allowance for or it should be including their allowance for Deputy Chief Executive and not going back to the allowance without it, if you follow me. In other words, the starting point is what they're getting at the moment, which includes an allowance of Deputy Chief. So what they would be getting in the next period of time would only be marginally above that, because most of it's already covered by being Deputy Chief Executive, and I can't imagine that. I suspect we're finishing up talking about tens of pounds, probably, rather than thousands of pounds. And it's whether it's worth the effort or not, I'm not sure. But it does seem very odd that we should be paying somebody to do the job for which they're already being paid, because if you're Deputy Chief Executive, the Chief Executive's here most of the time, then you're not doing it.
I think this case is slightly different insofar as they will actually be acting jointly as the head of paid service. So that they will be doing that for a period of time likely to be between 3 and 4 months, as we've talked about, depending on when the new CX's appointment is appointed. I do take the point that members have been very clear that that shouldn't start until the 1st of December, when Tony actually leaves, and they are actually undertaking that role of head of paid service. But within our pay policy statement, it is clear that if you're acting up to a higher role, which they would be acting up to the chief executive role, then you can be recompensed for that on the basis of the grade for which you are acting up to.
Yep, I
Sorry,
understand.
Pat. Oh,
I did ask, sorry.
so did,
Oh,
Will it? Just if I could just go back, I don't want to go back about the payment, but when you read out, I think you said they had to have been carrying out the task for 1 month. When you read the pay statement, that so therefore they wouldn't have been carrying it out if Tony doesn't go till the end of November. It would be January before the month that December. The month of December would be the month that they had to have carried that out before payment started. Just reading, just remembering what you read out to me just now.
Well, the way that works in practice is that you have to be acting up for at least a period of a month before you can have payment. It doesn't mean that the payment starts after a month, but it's to stop that a scenario from happening where somebody goes on leave, say, for 2 weeks, and somebody acts up to cover their role. For such a short period like that, you would not pay somebody an acting up honorarium. So you have to be doing it for at least a month before any acting up payment can start, but it can start from the period when you first started acting up.
yep, I understand that. Again, the whole idea of paying anything in addition to the money that they already get for being deputy, I'm struggling with. But would that not be more money than half? Because they can only have half each. I mean, is there a massive difference? Because if they're going to get an honorarium for acting up, the deputy payment would cease, and the honorarium can only be based on the bottom increment of the CX's pay grade. And I don't know how you calculate it here. There are all sorts of different ways of doing it, but that amount would be split between the two of them. They wouldn't both get the full amount. Is that correct?
If we were to be talking exact numbers, we'd have to go into private session, because it would be information relating to individuals. But the principle is that they would be, the deputy CX allowance that they receive currently would cease. They would then be paid on the chief executive scale, and the difference between their basic pay and the chief executive pay would be halved and given to the two of them. But the one proviso of that is that it can't be the bottom of the scale, because then they would actually end up receiving less than they do. That would be worth less than the deputy CX allowance, if that makes sense. So it's not the bottom of the scale that we would be looking at in this case.
Okay, I do see that. What's behind my reticence is this the way we would treat it at other levels of the organisation? That because if it is, then I think we can live with it. I can live with that. But if it isn't, then we need to be very clear about which way we are going to jump.
I think under the principle of fairness, we would to jointly appoint somebody to a role is very unusual, if I can put it that way to start with. But the principle of making sure that they were recompensed for doing the job at a higher level, we would always follow the principle that they would be earning more for doing the job at a higher level than they would have been receiving had they continued to just do the job at the lower level. So that principle would always be applied through the organisation.
And is in line with a bit of the pay policy that you read out as well, which I think is the deciding factor. I totally agree with Councillor Pearce that we should not go away from whatever is established policy, but equally we ought to stick with established policy, because otherwise it opens up an absolute can of worms.
Do I have a feeling that everybody's agreed? Well, it was worth it was worth spelling it out. Thank you for keep coming back and it's not an easy thing to get your head around, but thank you very much for that. Oh, sorry.
I was saying, would you like me to move the recommendation then, if that's the case?
I would love you to move the recommendation, but I think perhaps we ought to.
It's just we don't need to move. It's just whether the committee agrees.
All right. I'm told it's just a matter of if the committee actually agrees it. But Nigel's got his hand up again.
Again, it's just what else do we do? And I accept this is one way of doing it, but is there another way of doing it in terms of cascading this down so that the two of them, or one of them, doesn't matter really, get the temporary allowance, and then somebody beneath them is also asked to take on additional responsibilities, and so on? Is that not a way that you would operate? I mean, it would be within the pay policy.
Yeah, that certainly could be an option, but in this particular situation, the feeling of the current chief executive is that it's better to devolve that responsibility effectively, or give that responsibility over to both of the directors, and for them to undertake that jointly. So that is felt to be the most appropriate way of dealing with that fairly short interim period in this particular situation. But the alternative that you've suggested could also be an option that would be permissible under the pay policy statement.
So would that, I know it's only a short period, but if it was both of them, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be, then two other people would be given additional allowances for picking up the other work, because the work's still got to be done. So I'm just asking the question really, what made you say, let's do this and end, rather than, well, we'll temporarily promote these two, and then further down the line, giving people an opportunity, it's almost free opportunity to do work of a higher level of responsibility than they would normally have.
I think, as I say, in this particular case, I think the current chief executive felt that this was the best way of ensuring that the head of paid service and chief executive functions that he currently undertakes continue to get obviously to be undertaken, that key contacts and partners within the borough still have that continuity, because obviously the existing directors are part of the existing establishment, but it was felt that they could take on that additional responsibility, and that would be an opportunity for them as well as for people underneath them to pick up some elements of their work if that was required.
Can I just say that I think you'd already established that this is would be the norm in other respects, with other people in other positions. So I think we must be as fair as we possibly can in this circumstance. If that's the case, and if everybody's in agreement, we could move forward.
Yes.
I've been told that I haven't quite included everything. Is it your wish that it starts December rather than November? There's a lot of nodding heads, so I'm assuming everybody's in agreement. Eric, I haven't seen you nod. Thank you.
If that follows pay policy, yeah, it should be the 1st of December, and I think we need to stick with that, because it may happen further down the chain, and people will expect it then, and then it becomes a problem.
And so everything is agreed, number 1, number 2, and December. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes.
We've actually got to the end of the agenda. Thank you very much, everybody. I have to close the meeting apparently to get rid of the webcast, apparently. Is that right?